Good morning and welcome back to the Turtle Wins the Race Home-Based Business Podcast. My name is Kara Buntin and I have owned a home-based business since 1999. So that's what we talk about here. Today I want to talk about planning and how do you do an effective plan for yourself or your business when you don't know how to do that, right? And a lot of times plans change. And that's normal. I would think that most people have situations that come up that will change your business plan, and that's fine. But I want to use myself as an example because for the last year and a half, I want to say it's been a year and a half. My husband has been retired, and I've talked about this before. And you see him moving around in the background sometimes when I'm recording things. He's out playing golf now, so that's why I'm doing this while he's out of the house. It's just easier without having him lurking around in the background. But I went from being used to having the house to myself and I could record anything I wanted. I could do whatever I wanted without background distractions to now I have to ask him, are you going to be here? Where are you going? Are you going to be out at a certain time? And then I have to kind of structure my day around that. And it's also strange if you're still working and your spouse is retired because it starts making you think, oh, maybe my plan should be to retire also, but can you do that financially? And it's just a lot. And I think if it just is a weird dynamic. It's a weird dynamic. So if you're in the same situation and you know what I'm talking about, post a comment because it's interesting. I think that you don't think about this kind of thing until you're in the position where it happens, and it's just strange. But I used to have I guess it's the same situation. I used to have roommates who were rich, like their parents were rich. They were not rich because we were in our 20s. Nobody was rich in your 20s, but they were very comfortable because their parents just supported them. Okay, so they could do whatever they wanted, whereas I was getting up and going to work every day, and it's just living with someone else who's kind of in a different financial situation than you are. And in this case, I'm married to him, but it makes you think about your finances and it makes you think about your plan. And if you own a business and that's what you do for work, it makes you think about your business and where you want your business to go. Okay. So that's the point of this. But what I was thinking about is that I don't know if I said this already. I'm the type of person who will never stop working. Okay. I will always have something going on because I like it. But I would like to change it so that I don't have to pay as much attention to it, if that makes sense. So I want to kind of increase more passive stuff and I want to decrease the hands-on. And as I move toward retirement age, I would like to retire early, but that involves a lot of planning. So the planning comes in, and how do you do that? And it doesn't even have to be you retiring early. If you want to reach a goal with your business, whatever that is, you need to do the planning. So I think that it's really, really important. And if you haven't done this, you probably should. You need to sit down with a piece of paper and a pencil or a pen. Don't do this online. Do this with your hand. Do this with your own neurology. It's different when you do it if you do it organically as opposed to doing it digitally, right? It makes a difference and you will feel a difference. You need to sit down and figure out, just do a 5-year plan. People's like, what do you want to do in 5 years? And people, I don't know. You really need a 5-year plan. And that will really help you focus and figure out what you need to be working on. So I sat down and I figured out my 5-year plan of when I'm going to be retiring early. And it's more than 5 years for my actual retirement age. But I now have a plan written down that I can look at and focus on and say, this is when I can retire. And I don't know when that date is because it depends on other things that go into this calculation that I came up with for myself. But I think it has to be something that you're comfortable with. And I mentioned that, did I mention that I'm super cheap? I know I've talked about this before. I'm super cheap. I save a lot of money because I'm paranoid about living in a ditch and eating from the dumpster. Okay. So I save as much money as I can. And I honestly could probably retire right now but I am not comfortable with that. So I'm not going to. But I figured out on paper a point where I would be comfortable and what I need to do to get to that point. And I think this is the same for your business. If you have a business goal that you want to get to a certain point, you need to sit down and put it on paper so that you can see exactly what steps you need to take to get to that point. Because until you do that, it's just going to swirl around in your head and it's going to be a vague thought and it's going to be something that you're thinking about and hoping for, but you're not going to know what your plan is. So I now know what my plan is. And that's what's going to happen. So we'll see what happens with that. But I really, really, really think that everyone should just at some point this week, don't do it right now. You don't need to do it right now. Sit down and think, what do I want to do in 5 years? Where do I want to be in 5 years with my business? And it could be anything. Okay. Now, the one thing I will say, and this is really has always irritated me, is the people who say, if you don't have XYZ in place, then you don't have a business, you have a hobby that you run and earn money from. I'm like, shut up. Okay. That is a very, I want to say, I'm not even going to get political. Okay. But it's a very antiquated idea about business and what a business is. And pretty much I would think that most of the people who are watching this are creative entrepreneurs. And if we leave the business, it might be over because the business is predicated on the fact that we are using our neurology, our individual talent to run the business. And that's no less legitimate than a business where you have a franchise of something. Okay. There are books out there that people say, I love that book and I hate that book so much. I'm not going to say what it is, but there are books that basically it's a very old-fashioned idea about how a business has to be structured in order to be a quote unquote real business. And I think you need to get away from that. You need to get away from that idea and just respect your own business. Give your business the respect that it deserves, even if it's just something that brings you in part-time income, even if it's something that you don't want to sell when you're done. When I close my business, it's going to be done. My kids want no part of this. My kids don't want anything to do with my business. Okay. I'm not going to sell it. I'm not going to worry about that. And that doesn't mean that it's not a business. It has supported me for years and it is a business. I was going to say a dirty word. But yeah, so just get away from that idea because I think a lot of people are made to feel inferior because you don't fit the model of somebody else's definition of what a business has to be. But if you're earning money and it's supporting you and you have a goal for it and you want to, grow to a certain extent, maybe not ever. I'll talk about that next. It's a business. So if anybody says you don't really have a business, you have a hobby, tell them to shut up. All right. And let's talk about growth. Let's talk about business growth. Again, I think that there is this idea that if you don't want to grow your business, if you don't want to get it ready to sell, if you don't want to do this or that with it, there are certain criteria that people have. And I'm not, it's complete crap. Okay. You can do whatever you want with your business and it's still a business. Okay. Like I said, when I stop selling my business, it's just going to shut down. And I just did this with the silicone molds, right? I used to sell silicone molds. I stopped selling them because I was having a reaction to the silicone. I had a reaction to the silicone a few years ago. It was a different type of silicone than the one that I normally use. But when you have a reaction to one type, it's very likely that you're going to start reacting to other types. And I didn't want to take that chance. I didn't want to take a chance of getting to the point where I was going to develop like a sensitivity to silicone in other things because it's in everything, right? So I just said, I'm just going to stop making the molds. And I took a big financial hit this year because of that. But it was time because it just was time. And I think I probably it's like $20,000 in molds that I probably did not sell this year because I just stopped selling them completely. But I did not sell the business. I'm like, I think I gave the silicone that I had left over to someone. She paid for shipping, and I donated all the molds that I hadn't sold. They're all going to the craft store. And see these shelves that used to have bins on them? Those shelves that used to have bins on them are now holding the tinfoil hat squad. Oh boy, I can't move my hand the right way. There. Okay. Those used to be the masters for all of the molds that I made. They're gone. I threw them out. Okay. Um, and that doesn't mean I didn't have a business. It just means that I didn't dispose of my business the way that people say I quote unquote should. My kids did not want any part of it. This was not like a family legacy. They were not interested. And um, yeah, it's just it doesn't mean I didn't have a business because yeah. But anyway, you need a plan. You need to know what you're going to do divesting. And that was, I think, did I start? See, completely forgotten what I was talking about now. So divest was the word of the year for me. And every year I do, if I've said this already, I apologize because this is train of thought rambling. Um, every year I do a word of the year. This year was divest. I was getting rid of things. The silicone molds are on the list. Okay. So the silicone molds are gone. That's one of the things I just cut them off. That's it. And now I'm thinking of other things. There were other things that I just cut off, but I have to think of that in the framework of what I need to do to get to that early retirement, right? So this is why you need to sit down and write a plan. Basically, I think that's what this is all kind of whirling around in my head, and it's coming down to you have to have a plan. You need to know what pieces go into that plan. And I started out the year thinking divest was my word of the year, but halfway through the year, because we're in the beginning of July right now, I have added a word which is groundwork. Okay, because now I have written down my plan. I know what that plan is to get to early retirement. And now I'm going to lay the groundwork for the rest of it. So, what's your plan? And I think that everybody needs a plan, regardless of whether you're just starting out, regardless of what kind of business you have. You need to kind of know where you want to go with it, because if you don't, it's just going to be out there and you won't know what you're supposed to be doing to get to where you want to be. So sit down and write a plan, paper and pencil. Don't do it on the computer. And see if it helps you try to kind of focus where you want to put your effort and what you don't want to work on. I think that that's part of it is just deciding what you don't want to work on and what isn't going to help you get to whatever goal you've set for yourself. And don't feel like you have to have a business that you can franchise or you can sell later. It's not realistic when you are making money from creativity that comes from your brain. Because if your brain, your individual personal creativity is the basis for the business, you can't franchise that. It's not realistic. So I know this was very rambling, but again, I just figured this plan out for myself. You need to do it for yourself. I'm still putting pieces in place, but I think that's a normal part of the process. You're going to have a plan and then you're going to keep putting the pieces in place. So I have the plan basic, like the basic structure. Now what's going to happen is I'm going to start like filling it in with like, how do I get to this? How do I do that? That's the next step. And if you have a plan, either put it in the comments or just say, yeah, I have a plan. If you don't have a plan, sit down and figure out one for yourself, because it really will help you try to figure out what direction you want to take. And it's really important because you're never going to get anywhere if you don't have a plan. Anyway, okay. Give this video a thumbs up, even though it was like stream of consciousness, whatever. I think sometimes that's more interesting than the script. I never write a script, by the way, as you can probably tell. Okay, give this video a thumbs up and I will talk to you later.